Hello, everybody. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to meet with you tonight because I'm going to use your brains as we're going through this presentation. Amanda Zarley and I have been working on this for actually the last several months and are both in advertising and marketing. My career, in case some of you didn't know, I spent 30 plus years both as a CMO and on agency side and senior positions. And I work as a consultant now to various advertisers, mainly large ones. I've been in positions where I've done Super Bowl ads to doing startup social media pieces. So I've worked with small and big. And today we're going to really talk about the impact of Gen AI in advertising and marketing. And as John just mentioned in his 5 minute with Dr. John, which I always love and enjoy, the high value added areas. We're going to show you some of the areas that have been really impacted in the last couple of years, and then go through some real life case studies. So I have about 7 videos, and I think they bring some of these cases to life. Would definitely want to get your reactions to those. And it's going to point out some great things and some risks and threats. And we'll discuss that. And then we're going to talk about predictions for 2025 and beyond. And I'd love to get some Q&A from you all and some reactions. So take some notes during it. And if there's things you want to bring up, like, hey, what is that? You might have missed this trend. This is a draft and a good dry run for my presentation in October at the GAI World, which I'm super excited about. So that's my background, and we'll just start. So basically, we took a look at where have we really been, and agencies and brands they've been shifted from healthy skepticism to sort of cautious embrace of Gen AI tools. So if you look at 2022, when this, big news came out, everybody kind of was like, geez, this is big news, but what do I do with it? A lot of confusion, a lot of skepticism, and some scrambling to experiment. And then 2023 came along, and so last year, all these tools showed up. No one really knew which ones to grab on. Everybody thought everything was ChatGPT in our world, but gosh knows, so many other tools came up. Small scale pilot projects started happening. Obviously, content creation, personalized marketing. A lot of influencers started popping up. How do we use these avatars? And then really there was a big split between brands really using it and diving in and embracing it, and others kind of saying, hey, there's a lot of issues here with legal. We're going to wait and watch on the sideline, but starting to shift to consideration. So fast forward to this year, and really in 2024, and we're going to show you this, investment and piloting really has exploded. Basically, I still feel like there's a cautiously embracing innovation kind of mentality, but you'll see, and I'll show you in a minute, that large agencies and holding companies really started investing. And what they started to do is say, hey, this thing is here. And either our clients are going to use us and eliminate us, our fees are going to go down, or we're going to invest in some proprietary tools, charge our clients for those, and kind of address problems. So we're starting to see more and more of these proprietary tools popping up by large agencies. Meanwhile, small agencies or even individual creators are like, this is a gold mine. Now if I use this, I can do it quicker, faster, cheaper, and maybe even break into big brands. And we'll show you some examples of that with some unique creative opportunities. So that opened up a whole bunch of, entrepreneurial ventures for creators and small business owners. But most of them were really using, Gen AI as a springboard, inspiration, innovation. And then some of the bigger brands really started using it. And I'm going to show you some examples where there were some very public mistakes, which kind of travels like wildfire fire through the advertising creative world. So there's a lot of caution still out there. And I'll show you some that didn't go so well as some that went really, really well. In addition, we're really starting to see, and boy, with the election coming up, seeing more and more of it with fake ads. I'm going to show you some that kind of happened to brands, and brands going, wow, okay, these things are popping up. I didn't do that. How do we kind of guardrail our brand image? What do we do about our guidelines? This didn't come from us, but it's still pretty good, or it's a disaster, and some legal issues popping up. And I'll show you some examples of that. and then again, and this is one where Paul and John both talk about sort of what's going to happen to search, what's going to happen with Google, because now not only are brands becoming aware that it's Google, but also what are the large language models saying about me? And as you know, there's a number of startups that are kind of popping up to address that and monitor that and give folks a scorecard on how you're doing with large language models as a brand. So I think we're all starting to realize this year that human touch is still critical and necessary. I'm going to show you some where we guessed right and where we guessed wrong, but also, gosh, staying up on the trends and what's happening in these startups becoming a huge priority. And I would call it, 2024 was a lot of people saying, boy, FOMO, fear of missing out on Gen AI. Some folks are using it. I'm not using it. What should I learn? I'm getting asked that constantly by my own clients, by other clients. What training sessions should I be part of? Who's doing it right? Who's doing it not? So a general need and a thirst for sifting and making sure that they're paying attention to the right trends and not going down the rabbit holes on the wrong ones. And then later on in the presentation, I'll show you what we're predicting happening in 2025. Again, if we have missed some things, feel free to take some notes and lob them in at the end, because I definitely want to hear from you if there's some big trends that you feel like we might have missed. Okay, moving right along. So this is a Gartner slide. And this is, them basically predicting, and they had done a big study with top companies using Gen AI and asked, are you using it actively? Are you considering it, et cetera? This is the split you see in this graph, that basically half of them are actively assessing it. The others are sort of on the fence. Some of them are piloting. But contrast that to the creative world, which, if you're familiar with Dr. Johns and Paul and a couple others, the WINS framework, we know that in the advertising marketing space, we got impacted the most. We're in that top right quadrant. And so our data shows that 70% of creatives have sort of started to adopt, but really in terms of actively using it, it falls back to half if they're looking at how much they're using it weekly. So 70% know about it or using it, but only half are really doing so on a regular basis. But everybody realizing that the prediction that in 8 years, by 2032, AI is going to influence about 90% of all ad revenue, so they cannot ignore it. And I actually think that's going to happen quicker. And I'll show you in a second with all the investment that's happening. I think that brands that can show its use and effectiveness are going to thrive. And in our industry, when somebody hits on something, it is a fast follow by the mass to catch up and find their own proprietary tools. So I think that advertising is going to dramatically change in the next 5 years. I think we're just starting to see it now, but I think the next 5 years are going to be incredible. And so I think it's going to happen quicker than this prediction by Gartner. So let's look at what happened this year. So last year, we just talked about cautiously, people are piloting, you start to see it. And when I was asking people, even before the Gen AI World Conference, hey, can you share some examples? A lot of people saying, no, I don't want to share because we're not really sure if we're going to do it or not. We don't want to get into legal issues. So they kept it really to the vest. And I'll show you in a minute why a lot of brands did that and were smart to do that. But this year, lots of public announcements of significant resources building these tools, such as Publicis investing $326 million, Havas $428 million, Omnicom several hundred million as well. And they built a platform called Artbot AI, which helped achieve 40% increases in ad engagement. That's huge. So if you can show more ad engagement, clicks and video views, big money coming after that. So like, for example, in addition to getting more ads, clicks and video views on Artbot AI, they also used their proprietary tool for AT&T and took 2 commercial TV shoots and made 8,000 ads out of it, and then tried to optimize that across channels. Obviously, that takes a lot less time, people, to create, and anything you can do to increase clicks and get business up, obviously well received. So that's what I mean about, as soon as somebody has a good example like that, everybody else is diving in and saying, we got to offer this to our clients too. Otherwise, our clients are going to do it on their own, or they're going to go elsewhere. So these are the investments that are happening.
Just to really dramatic difference, though, is like last year there were quotes from CEOs saying and forbidding their employees from using it, to now putting $300 million into it. That's how big and quick the shift is happening.
Yeah, in less than a year. In less than a year. Okay, so this is another study we just saw. This is very current, July, out of almost 1,800 folks in the creative world that were interviewed by Marketing AI Institute. This is what's preventing folks, the barriers for adoption for AI for marketing. Number one, and this is no surprise, lack of education and training, lack of awareness, understanding, lack of strategy. I cannot tell you how many people come up to me, clients, very senior clients, and are just like, would either like a one-on-one to kind of take them through what this stuff is, or just want recommendations of where they can get the right kind of training, but just a general lack of awareness and unease, but no knowledge that fear of missing out if we don't get on this.
You should just tell them to ask ChatGPT, and then they'll be fine.
And exactly, or perplexity or whatnot, but definitely lots and lots and lots of questions about this, but then a deeper look, talent, not really having the right talent, the right skill sets, and lack of resources, fear or mistrust of AI. And that particularly, think about it in the creative world, if there's a widget that is doing it better than you are, how devastating that is in production and so forth. And of course, you're reading all about a loss of jobs, which honestly, and I'll show you in a minute that a lot of it is just, you still need the human touch. So there is definitely efficiencies happening, but also just skill set, upskilling, and getting people to know what's happening here. So this is no surprise, but really hit big in our world. And then the other piece I wanted to share with you is these are the top questions that we get. We compared this. There was just a big conference in Cleveland, the MyCom conference, and same kind of questions coming up across the board. How can our brand use these tools today? How can it be used to increase productivity? And that means like optimizing my social content, my email content, my leads, et cetera. How can I boost creatively, safely, and ethically? Huge problems. How do I personalize Gen AI at scale? How do I get this into my team's workflow? How do we approach training? Can we trust the output and not be sued? How's Google going to be impacted? Chatbots, are they in our future? And then also a lot of, large companies turning to the big consulting firms or their big holding companies, but what about the smaller brands and medium brands? Who do they turn to? Microsoft Copilot, hearing it's expensive. Gemini, I'm not sure. Is it accurate or not? Hearing things about Google. So a lot of these, and then lastly, just most importantly, how do we stay current? So these are a lot of questions. If any of you at the end of this have other ones, I'll add more onto them, but these are the big ones that Amanda and I hear all the time. And now I'm going to jump into some cases and some videos and show you some really good and bad examples. So let's start with a good one first.
So the other point here is that the examples we show are either they're using AI or they're talking about AI. So it's front and center for a lot of these brands. In some cases, they've used AI to create the entire brand, entire campaign.
Yep. So it's either about AI or using AI. This one is about AI and actually using AI. So most of you, we'll start with Dove. They very famous Real Beauty campaign. That's, their whole premise and insight is that, they've challenged false beauty standards for women for, decades, and keeping beauty very real. So in this particular one, which we'll play in just a minute, they asked ChatGPT to address what does real beauty mean from a large language model perspective. And then they put their Dove twist on it, on what Dove feels real beauty is. So we'll play this video. I think it's very self-explanatory, and there we go. Amanda, I can't hear the volume.
With me and you. Can you guys hear it?
Yes, now we can.
In a world take a look and you see into your imagination
will explanation. There's nothing to it. There is no life I know to come. Living there be free if you truly still be. So, sorry about the video being a little bit rough there, but I think you got the main point that basically Dove used the large language models to define the standard of beauty, realized that was coming back with a stereotype, entered and trained their model on what they believe real beauty was, and used it super effectively. So this was a really, really great example of Dove doing it right, getting a lot of accolades for this and standing out as a leader. So that was a really amazing and highly successful campaign for Dove. Next one, though, this one, for those of you who watch the Olympics, you probably saw the Dear Sydney ad. This was a misstep by Google, unfortunately, and they actually did a ton of research on this before they aired it, but this was a case where Sydney McLaughlin was a hero of a girl and who was obviously a little girl who was wanting to be a track star when she grew up. And so her father actually asked her to use Gemini AI to write a letter. She was going to write a letter to her athlete, saying that she wanted to be her when she grew up. And there was a huge amount of backlash. I'm not sure if any of you saw this, but basically Google ended up having to pull the ad. It was kind of right there in the league of sort of that Apple ad, which also received a lot of backlash where the computers got smushed and instruments got smushed. But basically on this one, it was just people saying that AI is not something we want our kids using. We want them to learn how to write and send letters, even if imperfectly in their own, with their mistakes, etc. And so Google got a little bit of a backlash of not really understanding their customer and being a little tone deaf. So this was an example of a misstep.
My little girl's always been a runner, just like me. I've always thought she was following in my footsteps. Hey, go get her, baby. But lately, she's been looking up to someone else. She might even be the world's #1 Sydney fan. And like Sydney, she's focused on her technique. Good job, baby. Accelerate out the curve. High knees. There you go. She wants to show Sydney some love, and I'm pretty good with words, but this has to be just right. Yeah. So Gemini, help my daughter write a letter telling Sydney how inspiring she is. And be sure to mention that my daughter plans on breaking her world record one day. She says, sorry, not sorry.
So again, that ad, and if you saw it, super high production value. Obviously, Google put a lot of effort into that, ended up having to pull it, and a lot of backlash. And again, this is just recent for Google on that, not really understanding how their customers really want to see AI used or not used. Next one, this is a really good example. Another one, so Orange is a big telecom company, French, and they used AI to create a campaign to address the skills of the women's soccer team. So we'll just play, Amanda, we'll just play maybe half of this one so we can show them what they did here.
C'est ça, les bleus qu'on aime. C'est ça, les bleus qu'on aime.
So basically what Orange did there is they took the female soccer team, imposed using Gen AI features, and turned them from women to men, showed it to show the incredible skills, and then revealed that actually they were women. So this was another one that was highly successful. It went viral to help support how women's soccer is underestimated compared to men's, highlighting their talent. And also this was done, efficiently. It was, it was created with artists and a lot of retouching and a lot of AI, but this is something that probably couldn't have been done in the past as well. It was done here, using the new tools, and huge, high regard for Orange and what they did here, a big success in kind of addressing that. This next example is another creative use of Gen AI that was used by Virgin and Voyages. And this was a little fun play on using Gen AI. This is an example of where they actually used Gen AI in the ad. So this was also an expensive ad. It wasn't like they saved a lot, but they were just highlighting what could be done with Gen AI.
Hi, it's me, Jennifer Lopez, Chief Celebration Officer of Virgin Voyages, here to invite you to celebrate. So come, celebrate
Your anniversary, your birthday, or just generally being fabulous.
Really, Kyle?
It's good, right?
Gen AI is supposed to be inviting people to Virgin Voyages, not doing whatever that was. Just give me that. As I would say.
Why not celebrate on an award-winning voyage with Michelin-starred chef-curated menus?
World-class destinations, award-winning.
Boring. I'll hop in there. I'll hop right in that suit.
I can't watch this. Give it to me. There's no kids here. That's all you need to know.
No kids.
Oh, can I live there?
Gen AI. Invite your crew to voyage. Create your custom invite at virginvoyages.com.
It's not just a yacht, it's a super yacht.
So again, that was a fun example of a big brand using Gen AI in their art, in their creative, and got a huge amount of increase in engagement, etc. It's a fun, successful case study. Next one. Now this is an example, and this is one on the bad side, unfortunately, for a big brand. And this is the stuff that causes all that cautiousness and risk averseness. This is Under Armour. So what happened here is that they created this beautiful ad, but unfortunately they used a director that used a Gen AI LLM using a previous director's work without his permission or in direct involvement. So even though the ad turned out really well, he recognized his work in it, and there was a huge backlash and huge storm about not properly accrediting him and crediting him for his work and using it without the proper credit from Under Armour. So this ended up being a little bit embarrassing, if you want to show this, but it's a beautiful spot.
It's an easy choice. Make the hard way. You can fight. You can fade. It's happy to forget you. It's made yesterday. And the future is made when you fight. Like there's no tomorrow.
So again, that one, a beautiful spot. Director realized they used the large language model, used his work to create the new thing, caused a whole lot of conversation. And I believe what ended up happening, well, I think they're still resolving it, but one of the directors, this is a case where if a brand buys it, does the brand own it? Does the director own it? So it's causing all kinds of dialogue about property rights and rights and usage rights to a director or creator's work. And it raises, what about photography? What about, other assets? So this caused a lot of dialogue. And Amanda, I think it's still going on. I'm not sure it was ever really resolved.
I think that the main backlash then comes from creatives because they feel really anxious about all of their work that's out there that can be inspiring other work, and they don't get credit for it. So,
or paid. So,
right.
And then we'll keep moving along because I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for questions. But this is just an example, and we don't have to play it. But this is a Volvo ad. It was fake. It was created in one day. Great ad, created in 24 hours, buzz everywhere, not from Volvo. So this is, again, who controls the brand? What do you do when somebody develops one of these, puts it out? It's great, it's amazing, but we didn't create it. So
in this case, it's good, but you can imagine there'll be cases where it's not good and it goes completely against your brand guidelines. And then what do you do?
And then what do you do when it's out there? And then also, even these companies that are using Gen AI to kind of do a brand ranking with large language models, they can't differentiate between a fake one and a real one either. So are those rankings accurate or not? So it raises all kinds of issues. The next one. Last year, we talked about influencers and avatars developing. There's a whole lot of happening in this space. Last year, we talked about Lil Miquela, and she has 2.5 million followers. And she did a BMW ad, so here's this Gen AI created model being an influencer. This year, Coach used Ima, and she doesn't have as many followers, but used her to Find Your Courage campaign. She's named as one of the new talents to watch. So these stars are still popping up with influencers that can be very successful for brands that want to create an influencer and kind of control it a little bit more. Next, Amanda, yeah, and this, as a tag onto that, though, there are startups. This is MakerDoai. This is a startup because of that demand and also problem with, hey, if I create it, how do I know if I own it? And do I really own these rights? This is a startup that decided they're going to offer a modeling salon, if you will, and kind of the Getty of avatar or real models so that they can vet them, they can make AI images from them and offer them to agencies so that if you shop with them kind of thing, that you've got a safe, legally approved avatar or model and save time and cost of producing ad assets for agencies. So this is like a glimpse into the future. There's a huge rush. I'm sure there's way more than just Makery out there doing this, but this is one that we just met with that was showing us, they're trying to address it head on fakes and provide opportunities for athletes, celebrities, and models to make real money and be able to control it through their platform. Small agencies, this is another one where we talked about the creativity that's coming up. This was Artify Yourself. I'll show you this. This was one where you could use either Van Gogh, Basquiat, or Will Kooning, and AI yourself in one of those styles. This was just recently done for a big wealth management company at a festival in the Hamptons, and this was a big hit. And again, a smaller agency. This is me. I actually participated in this, and I'm not sure what I think about my images here. but this is the kind of thing that's happening. Another small agency example. This is, a campaign about help bugs, the send pests packing their bags campaign using AI and generative. Another small agency, actually a Boston agency called Hey, Let's Go, doing a great job with this as well.
We spoke to the CEO there and the creative director, and the main thing here, and this is true for a lot of these small agencies and large agencies, that what used to take them weeks is now taking them minutes to do. And now they're creating a whole library of images for digital media, direct mail, events, trade shows in minutes and days, what used to take weeks.
So predictions for 2025, based on what we've been seeing, we think, we talked about 2024 being cautiously embracing innovation. We think it's going to be very more proactively embracing innovation, but still including human touch, as you can see, and judgment. That some of those examples of things that went well and didn't go well still requires human judgment that can't be replaced. Personalization at scale, chatbots, avatars, we see those continuing. More investment and usage of tools by big agencies. Everyone's going to want to separate themselves and outdo the next. Small agencies, though, still opportunities to carve their niche and come up with solves for some of those pain points, like we talked about. How do I know if I have an avatar or I'm using a model that I can use for AI that's paid for? Folks solving those problems. So again, a big upside and a big downside, trying to avoid the downsides, shifting some of our strategies, how are large language models demonstrating my brand, but also understanding that there's still regulatory compliance and AI attribution. So an emergence of breakout leaders. I think some folks are going to win, and those big cases are going to get all the attention. And I think startups are going to continue to race for solutions. I think it's going from fear of missing out to fear of being left behind, or very rapidly. And I think that you're going to see more and more of that. So these folks that are highly creative are going to keep being highly creative, and we're going to just start seeing more and more and more great use cases with great results. And the implications, boy, we better continue to learn, experiment, and personalize at scale, prioritizing training classes. So we've actually kept a list of some of them. We know that GAI Insights offers training classes on a high level, but I think the training classes are going to get more and more specific, more ad revenue impacted by AI, proactively looking at how we are showing up with LLMs versus Google. The human touch is going to still be needed. I don't think that's ever really going to be replaced. I think it's just going to be a different kind of human touch. And then also we know, and we're hearing about this as well, and others, if you are, please pipe in at the Q&A, but being able to delineate work that was done using AI versus not, and being honest about disclosures are going to be more and more important. I think guidelines are going to come from AAF and ANA around that. And there's going to end up being laws and processes to identify and deal with real versus fake ads. There's going to have to be some way to delineate them so that you don't have a fear of being left behind, but you also don't get sued. So these are our predictions and implications for the future. In addition to this, Amanda, did we include this is what we think is going to remain uniquely human, the things in blue: common sense, imagination, instinct. You can't replace that. Experience, self-awareness, and then of course the things in black that, yes, we're going to be able to use tools for that. And this actually, we took this from a recent the MyCon conference in Cleveland. And
Liz,
then
sorry. Liz, I don't know if you address it later. One of the questions I had is, if you look back, we did some strategy work for a couple of different big media, the agencies, WPP and so forth. And it was really interesting. I mean, if you look at the history of those, my simple-minded way of looking at it is you had, Marty Sorrell, Sir Martin, right, and a bunch of other folks basically buying a whole bunch of agencies. And the way they got scale is a couple things. They got it by geography. Okay, you're dealing with Unilever around the world. The other thing is that they did it by variety. They said, okay, you don't like, this agency, we'll get you a different agency. Oh, you want some leading edge, you have fear of being left behind. Hey, we have people with, more piercings and tattoos and whatever than anybody, or more technology than anybody. Just go to this brand or this brand. And it seemed like that model had kind of run its course. And then, Google and Facebook and so forth have such power. Sorrell, before he got tossed out of WPP, got very close to them, right? And basically was a value-added thing on top. And then now he's spun his own company out because I think he thinks that the economics of that diversity are now gone, right? And he's talking about vertically integrating and doing value add on the people who have access to the data. And we did a couple of strategy studies, as I mentioned. The big thing was, can you have a much better scale, economic scale of customer data without, fighting with Google and so Facebook? And what will the future industry structure be? And just for example, will this basically descale the industry? Small groups of people working with Google and Facebook, basically acting like a global scale company.
Right. And actually, John, that's such a salient point, because we're seeing that is happening. Look at Coca-Cola with the Real Magic campaign. They basically called creators. It wasn't even their agencies, and said, we want the best ideas wherever you are. And then they hooked them up with their data, so they're working on their own individual data because data is still king. And then they brought the best creators in. And then of that, that folks that were artists or not even related to Coke ended up, having Times Square billboards with their work on it and being kind of engaged internally with their internal groups. I think that, to your point, the agency models, what this year happened was, again, these proprietary tools based on data. So there was a scramble for that. Once that's, and those are now being adopted, and these individual creators that may or may not be associated with an agency. So I do think that the old models of just, we have presence here are dead. I don't think that's going to matter moving forward. I think it's going to be data driven, and I think it's going to be creativity driven.
But given that the agencies are spending $400 million on those proprietary tools, they're not going to give up those relationships with the big without a fight. So that's their investment now.
Exactly. And so that's what's interesting. And in addition, then there's all these startups coming in to solve those same problems that they solved with these big, expensive models. So are they going to get antiquated, or are they going to keep up? It's going to be interesting.
Or acquired. So it's going to be another round of acquisitions from this hugely fragmented industry.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So training courses, there's all kinds. And I really, if you have some that you've taken, could you please either email liz.vanzura@gmail.com or put it in the chat, because we really want to keep building this out. But there's free ones, and a lot of folks, know of those. Or there's like the Google AI Essentials course, fantastic course. It's $50. Then there's now almost every university, college is offering, an AI course, but they're actually usually a couple $1,000s. So we're sifting through that. If you've taken good ones, let us know so we can keep building this up. These are just a couple that Amanda and I and a couple others have been. So thanks again. We'll open it up and take some questions, responses, thoughts, critiques, all open. Lucinda.
Can I?
Lucinda?
Yeah. Hi. First of all, thanks very much for this, and Liz, for putting these thoughts together, and Amanda, because just the examples that you gave really were very helpful to see, like, okay, what are some cool things that are happening there. I had a question about just like how agencies are managing. Like, I remember Alden had said he had created like 200 articles, right? And you talked about how they created 400 ads, right? So that's good to be able to create the 400 ads, but then, okay, this one goes to, Instagram, this one goes to this persona, blah, 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 blah. So you have a whole matrix of things and all the specific tweaks to the ads that can be kind of automated or semi-automated. How do you see that playing out with these agencies?
That's what, Lucinda, that's such a good point. And that's exactly what those big proprietary models were. So the first model that Omnicom did was that they were asked, how do we personalize our, social media, so we can customize it against our target personas. And then how do we optimize that in a buy to make sure we're getting the most clicks, et cetera. That was the big investment in the model. So they actually produced 8,000 ads. It wasn't 400, it was 8,000 off of 2 shoots.
Wow.
That was done using AI to generate headlines, to generate theme lines or put images based on their shoot. So they knew they had the shoot. They generated the video and the photography, so they knew they owned it. And that's what they're working on now. And so they're showing their client, oh, engagement went up, clicks went up, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what the big investment is, because the first 3 things that you do whether you're a startup or a big brand, is search, social, and display. Those were always the most efficient channels: search, social, and display ads. So those are the first 3 that they need to know. Are those still, is that investment still paying off? So that's what these models did. And then they moved to personalizing, how do we personalize and customize that experience? So that's what the big investment is.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what it was, like, yeah, what exactly were they doing? Were they fine-tuning models or anything? But you're saying it's really kind of automating or semi-automating the ability to make those 8,000 ads so that they have the machinery to go and pump out those, to distribute those ads.
Yes.
All right.
I think going forward, though, a lot of the smaller agencies are using it for production. So a lot of that money that used to go into big, huge productions where you spend 4 days on a photo shoot or a video shoot, you don't need to do a lot of that anymore. It went from even like CGI, where it's a green screen, to, text to video. So it is a huge leap. It's not quite where creatives want it to be, but they're playing around with it and really creating some amazing things.
The advertising industry has always been and always will be a race to the bottom of costs, and that's going to make this production capability even cheaper and less value. And I don't mean to be negative, but I was 20 years in the ad industry, so it's hard to kind of say they're not going to do anything but kind of eat each other for lunch, and it's just going to be a miserable mess. And all this creative fun at the same time.
Yeah, David, you mean miserable mess in a nice way. Yeah. Jeff, you put your hand back down. I was going to go to Gabriel. Or...
I was just going to say, I was at Macon. Sorry about that. I was at Macon. That automation you saw, you do not need a large agency. They were showing automations with APIs built in from Make.com and Zapier to create the 8,000. It just still does come down to, I still think it's still strategy. What is it you want to achieve? How do you want to do it? With whom? How you're different? You still need those folks who are really smart and first ones to adopt the technology, and then the execution to meet the market. But in all that, I think, Liz, you said it, it is still the human in the loop. And brands need to now build that digital trust. And there's lots of ways to do that with great content like GAI does every week, multiple times a week. You need authorities you can trust, but we're there already. People, small agencies, really creative people, are creating the automations through existing APIs to be much more effective, much more quickly. And it's interesting, that agency that you just cited with the fighter, they were given less than 30 days by Under Armour to create that work with no access to the fighter. So they had to repurpose anything that was existing. Now, the question, to your point exactly, is who's at fault here? Did that agency not ask the right questions? Did Under Armour have the right to give them the creative that was already done on their behalf? Those are questions we're all going to have to decide as we move forward into this future.
Yeah, and it's interesting because anybody on this Zoom knows, creatives are super sensitive about their creativity. It's their livelihood, it's their work, it's their art. And so when you say a computer can do it or has used my work, there's a huge amount of sensitivity. So I don't think we've seen or heard the end of that. But that's what puts all the caution out there. If Under Armour can make a big mistake like that, if Google can make mistakes, what about me and my brand? Am I using the right data? So that's the cautiousness. That's why I think, these trends that we're talking about, yes, can the tools do it? Yes, but can they do it safely? Maybe, right? Question mark. Do you want to be the guy in the headline that created that Google ad for the Olympics? So, it's just, that's the, the opportunities and the risks, I think, moving forward.
I think, why don't we go ahead and end it there. Thank you so much, Liz, Amanda. That was super interesting and super helpful, and just the beginning of the world of nonlinear advertising getting completely transformed, and who knows what the industry structure will look like and who the winners and losers are going to be, but certainly creativity amplified.